have a nice conversation. Good afternoon. It's a great pleasure to be here. Jay and Renata, good afternoon. We are here to talk about new topics. And in this panel that we are going to see now in the next 30 minutes, Deloitte brings their vision exploring Gen AI point of view in a different way. We know that Gen AI is always in the agenda. We have never seen a technology that is expanding so fast in everybody's agenda as a priority in investments in technology. We are launching FEBRABAN survey showing everything, something that is relevant. Everybody's talking about it. When we talk about financial services, the focus is very strong on efficiency in the world of back office, also the front end, also in the technology area. The focus is always very strong in efficiency, not so strong. It's just an attempt, I would say, in the client experience. But the biggest point is always efficiency. And in order to talk about what comes next, we are living this hype, this moment that we are learning, engaging people. And in order to talk about it, what comes next, next steps, next wave? We have here on the stage Jay and Renata. Both have experience, not so focused in financial service. They know about it, but their lives, their experience is to manage transformation projects in different industry, big clients all around the world. Renata works in Brazil and Jay works at Dell. Jay, I start with you. So we explore more our questionnaire. And of course, we have our questions, we know beforehand. But I believe when we see different technologies, we see that our moment is, we are trying, we are experimenting. What is concrete that you see already going on? What is really solidifying the institutions or the companies in different sectors that you work and that you see with this, the wave of Gen AI? What's going on? What is here and what is solid already, and the steps that we see for the future? Biagini, first I'd like to thank you so much for this event that is so relevant for the sector. It's a great honor to share the experiences that we have with their main clients. And it's important to tell you that we heard in different presentations about the evolution in the last 2 years so fast. Gen AI is not 2 years, but it's very fast in the last 2 years. And in the last year, we talked about experiment, cases used, and difficulty to scale. And today, we see concrete cases. And when we see specifically the survey at FEBRABAN and a survey of Deloitte about global AI with more than 3,000 executives, we see that 80% of the companies already use AI at some scale, even if they are trying. It's important to say that Brazil is not behind this schedule, especially in the financial sector. We see a maturity and advance bigger than other countries. In our FEBRABAN survey, we see that 65% of the companies are experimenting, but 30% already of these companies have already some AI in their production. Maybe some limited cases and 10% in large scale. And it's also important to mention, I bring statistics before talking about concrete cases. This is interesting. And Guerra commented in the CIO panels, most of these experiments prove gains, 11%. And there is 40% of the companies in our survey at FEBRABAN Brazil showing that this gain was superior to 30%. Another point that is also very important, out of these cases of use, just 30% will use in production in the next 6 months. That's the difficulty of putting into production AI. And in this point, I'd like to tell you that people are talking about the speed. The technology is growing exponentially. so fast, it's available, but the organizations cannot follow up the speed of this technology to use it and capture their benefits. And then we are going to discuss more these difficulties in having the proper speed for AI use. In general, I'm telling you that AI is being used intensively for efficiency, hyperautomation, also for the analytics, compliance, fraud identification, improving the analysis, but also development codes in IT when we talk about back office, also in the front end, the customer experience, hyper-personalization. These are some points that we see in organizations using instant channels so you can access the communication with the clients. Also, today you access segments that was not explored in the past. And this varies in different sectors. When you see financial services, you see a priority in efficiency, back office, legal systems, code development with expressive gains, and front end, that is biggest priority to advance and bring a better experience to the customer. And we see the agentic. When you see consumption is focused on customer experience, upsell and cross-sell. When you observe the industry of intensive capital and manufacture is more for operational use, autonomous operation, bringing higher safety, exposing the employees to lower risk, and monitoring all the operations in low connectivity sites. But what's more important, depending on the industry, you have a different focus, and this focus can converge. So experiences that you have in use or industrial use, intensive capital, financial services, you can cross all these experience. Today, I believe in Brazil, in the financial sector, we clients, we see this already. It's ongoing already. And there is this potential of modifying, changing the platform, not only in the financial sector, any other sector. Most of the things that we do today will not exist in 2 years. We need to get ready for that. Physical channel probably will be re-signified. New functionalities will come up, new players, and a different ecosystem will be present. And in this sense, all the AI strategy cannot lose the focus. That is the client. Who are you going to serve so well? How we are going to serve this client and manage this diversity that is changing players, competition, business models, and platforms. I was curious to explore more when you talked about other industries. Here in financial sectors, we always talk about financial services. And it's nice to see other energies coming from other industries, specifically in Gen AI. You mentioned some sectors. What is the use case that you see ongoing outside financial services? New things coming up. We can also observe financial services and say, we can apply this here as well. Do you have an example to share with us? And Jay, the floor is yours after that, okay? I believe some examples, I will name one that is public, not the name of the company. Intensive capital, oil and gas company. That is maintenance. I'm laughing, maintenance in remote sites and hazardous work. And the maintenance work in these oil rigs is an intensive investment and high risk. Is done very fast and with assertivity, as the financial sector has regulatory matters and the standards that need to be met. And there is a work on how you create a database of thousands of years so you can bring the best input for that person working in maintenance in oil rig, high risk of hazardous work. Certain behaviors and assessments that they need so they can be more assertive. They do not have enough time to solve that problem. And the biggest point is, how can you teach this? How can you organize this information? And if you place in ChatGPT, he will bring lots of information. And all this information, this company is the biggest and the market leader. The information is not outside, it's in-house. How can you organize thousands of years of information from engineers, experts, so you can have an assertive answer depending on the behavior? And this is a work we tested in a question, you know. You have the reasoning and then you refine the answer, so it's assertive for that survey. That's the application in different sectors, concrete cases, business cases that were proven. And it's important to tell you that is also an aspect. We need to prepare the large language model. Processing cost is a point that needs to be considered because the gains are charming, 90% of gain, 40% of gain, but the cost of processing AI is not cheap, and we need to have an architecture that is long-lasting enough to support the application, because AI will be present in all the processes. In this case that you name, this approach was using this platform because there is internal knowledge, there is a cost to manage it all. And here in the hat as financial service, we see an approach that is not directed to that. Our approach is from different LLMs being used, not so much the private ones. And depending on the type of information that we manage, the volume of transactions, maybe this is an approach that can be used by the financial industry. We are not using. Jay, with you now.
Given your I think you are. Eu vou continuar em português então. E aí eu acho que
I
eu
will
volto
keep
para
in
você.
Portuguese and I get
Agora você
back
está
to you.
ouvindo?
Can you hear me in English now?
Agora sim.
Yeah?
É que
Okay.
estava com o canal ali
He was in Portuguese. Jay,
Considerando
considering your broad
em
experience
projetos
that you
globais,
have in global projects such
rede
as
global
global
de data
network
science
of data
da Dell.
science at Dell,
A gente sabe que
we
você tem
know
uma
that you
experiência
have an
e você vê muitos
experience and you
projetos de
see
transformações acontecendo.
transformation
E
projects
a gente
going
sabe que
on,
às vezes
and we know
adotar
that
novas
sometimes using
tecnologias
new
e a questão
technology
do risco,
and there is the risk.
às vezes vira dilema
Sometimes
dentro
it's
de uma
a
organização.
dilemma in the
Como que você vê
organization. How do you
organizações
see your
globais
global
superando
organizations
esses desafios, superando
overcoming
os desafios que tem
challenges,
Brasil, seja com
overcoming the
mudanças ou às vezes
challenges
a
in
própria adoção da
governance, and
tecnologia?
using the
Queria que você
technology?
explicasse um
I'd like
pouquinho
you
isso,
to
Jay.
talk about
Tem
it,
uma coisa
please.
mais que eu queria colocar
Something
no
else in your
tocante, falando um
question.
pouquinho, você
Talking
como um cara
about
de dados, de
you
ciência de
is
dados,
a
o quanto
data science
dados
guy. How much
contribui para
data
superar esses desafios
contribute
que
to
você
overcome
percebe dos
challenges that you
clientes que você
realize in the
atua,
clients that you work?
adotando e realizando
Using
projetos de novas tecnologias
new
no Brasil?
technology, in this case, Gen and I.
Yeah, I think, it's very interesting, right? Because one of the largest issues with AI is the misconception that we are in a perfect technology. What we are trying to do here is to productionize a beta technology that has a massive percentage of error, and Gen AI is no exception. And so it's quite interesting because when we talk about the tremendous amount of data that organizations collect, including Dell, right, where we collect a lot of information from around the world, Deloitte does the same thing, we're not immune to any of this, right? And so while we have approaches, and you see so many vendors here that have various different approaches, I think we hit the nail on the head to say it's not so much about the algorithms themselves. Almost every algorithm in the world is open source. Even though there's, I would say, bogus sales tactics with stabilization of algorithms and being able to download them from the likes of a lot of the partners here. The reality is that we really need to be able to learn how to crawl before we run. And what I mean by that is, data science and AI is very simple. The equation is garbage in equals garbage out. And so when you have a tremendous amount of data in your organization, obviously you rack in a tremendous amount of cost associated with being able to do the basic ability of cleaning this data and getting it ready for consumption, which is exactly what we need to actually be able to get better and better results, which is what you were speaking about. Now, when we talk about cost and we talk about cost of service, ultimately AI is just a tool just like anything else, right? And so while we want to implement, and I see almost all the big banks in the world I work with, all of their chief data officers, they want to be able to take advantage of AI. We really need to understand the risks associated with the percentage of error associated with the productionization of AI. Most of the algorithms in the world, because of, like you just mentioned, we need enterprise-specific data that is clean data in order to actually get an output that makes sense. And so, a lot of that conversation, while we're so focused on tool sets, and trust me, I love my tools just like anybody else does, right? I'm a scientist at my core, and my entire global team of data scientists, we love our tools as well. Everything from Databricks to Snowflake to you name it. The reality of the situation is if garbage goes into a tool, garbage comes out. And this is where we really have to start thinking about what does it mean to manage data differently. Not only for being able to get data where it needs to be for artificial intelligence, but really how can we drive business value, which is ultimately what we're trying to do with the implementation of AI, is how can we make money or save money, and that's the ultimate goal, right? Even though I love science and I love my tool sets, at the end of the day, it all comes down to money and how can I actually be able to generate more of it. And so when we look at tool sets and we look at the ability to actually manage tremendous amount of data in every single organization I've seen, we need to be able to start understanding how do we marry three strategies. How do we marry a business strategy with a data strategy with an infrastructure strategy? And I don't just mean Dell infrastructure. I mean a holistic environment in which we can take advantage of a tremendous amount of data that every one of our organizations has collected and get it to a refined state that allows me to actually start producing outcomes. And like she just mentioned, AI is not cheap, right? And while we're so focused on GPUs and we're so focused on being able to get the best in class when it comes to performance, you can have the best GPUs in the world. I was with NVIDIA 2 weeks ago, and I had posed this question. This is quite funny. We can have the best supercomputer in the world, but if I have no data, what's the point of your GPU, right? And so we need to think about this differently because the marriage of those three strategies we've never done. When we look at customers, I think Deloitte and us work very closely together. We always have seen businesses grow through the marriage of 2 out of 3 of those strategies. The data team says, hey, I want to go buy Databricks. Here's $350,000. IT never questions it and says, here, I'm going to go buy it. But when Deloitte comes in and says, well, wait a minute, you spent $350,000 on a tool set when your ROI associated with a Gen AI project is barely $100,000 for the next 5 years, what are we doing here, right? So we really need to understand how do we marry those three strategies, and that's a very complicated answer because, like you just mentioned, we have a lot of data, and there's so much focus on Gen AI and the fancy tools. Let's learn how to crawl, because if we can crawl right and we can evolve our organizations, we can actually derive an outcome from AI, which is actually truly a beta technology.
And Jay, I think you just pop up my question on my head now in your comment. I like the way you frame the business strategy with data strategy. Eu gosto da forma que você coloca a estratégia de negócio com a estratégia ali de tecnologia e a estratégia de dados. Gostei da forma que você colocou isso. Como que GenAI, sobre a ótica de ferramenta mesmo, tecnologia, pode ajudar a gente fazer a sincronia e o alinhamento dessas três estratégias?
I think I caught half of what you said because I wasn't getting the translation, but you said, are there any tools to match those three strategies? Yeah, so I think that we have to get out of our head when it comes to marrying tool sets. That's the number one thing. Tools come and go. I think it's all about being able to understand how we can build a truly holistic strategy, and that holistic strategy is going to have to start with an open ecosystem. Why do I say that? Because when we look at AI and the evolution of AI, there was no such thing as one tool fits all, right? We see this currently, right? OpenAI is a phenomenal platform, like you were just mentioning, but what's next, right? And so for us as a business, we want to make sure that we're deriving the maximum output when it comes to AI, but in order to actually be able to do that, we need to actually break some of the historical foundational investments that we've made. And that's primarily because of how we have invested as organizations individually, including our customers, right? We've married tool sets, and therefore now we're saying, hey, do we have a tool for a tool, right? What's next? A tool for a tool for a tool, right? And so these license fees are, honestly, look around. These license fees are how these guys make money, right? And so we need to be able to understand, hey, we need to get control of our data back. We need to get it to in a cost-effective manner. No, I don't want your proprietary lock-ins with your tools. I want a ground foundation of true data, that's real data, that my business can use on a day-to-day basis to make decisions. And if we want to use AI, then we now have a platform that allows us to do so. And that's actually what we've been doing, selfishly at Dell as well. We happen to have a portfolio of being a data company to be able to break free of some of these silos investments, because there is no such thing as one tool fits all, including Dell. We can't solve everything, right? But the combination of being able to work together, and that's what science is how can we work together and being able to take bits and pieces and building a strategy where we can marry those three strategies and be able to evolve together as humanity. And Brazil's a perfect opportunity, because I think, having seen and met with most of the customers in Brazil, Dell happens to be a very large global player, just like Deloitte. One of the things I found is there is appetite for change, not just from an ability to make money, but to actually be able to provide a better service to our community here in Brazil. And the way we're going to be able to do that is to be able to think about this completely different, not toolset oriented, but outcome oriented. How can I drive outcomes faster, cheaper, easier? Forget about the tools, forget about the platforms. Let's make sure we reduce the cost of service so we can actually change our community together.
I would comment about data because, Jay, we have some assessment. When you are in a control environment, your MVP, and our clients say the assertivity level is over 90%. But when you scale, the assertivity level drops to 50%. And this is severe depending on the interaction and the use, because there is no data enough. Maybe there is, but not structured data. In a conversation with iOS, it was interesting because there is a dictionary of data. But the organizations need to know what is the objective for data use. Because when you have a federal model of innovation and creation of cases, you can also have misconceptions, depending on the way you use the data. So data is really critical. And we see assertivity of the model, time for training the model. Here in Brazil, we have open finance that could make it easier, the acceleration of training sessions for the model to bring more assertivity in controlled environment. But there is the governance and risk layer that has to be observed. Why are you using the data? What is the use in the algorithms that we are using?
Yeah, and this is quite funny, right? Because we tried to solve this as a community, and we try to get smart by saying, hey, why don't we hire a data engineering company or a data engineering team? And I say this very humbly because my best friend is a data engineer. But data engineering is a cost center. It's not a profit center, right? And so when I want to be able to derive outcomes faster, like you mentioned, we're so focused on processing power and processing speed, getting to garbage faster doesn't allow me to make any better decisions. It just costs me a tremendous amount of money. And so we need to think about exactly what you said. We need to think about how can we be able to reduce our cost of service, valuable data to where it needs to be. And while we've had these historical buying patterns and historical methodologies, we need to be realistic with them a little bit, right? We need to say, look, we tried these outcomes, we tried these theories that most of these organizations have been trying to put out there, and the only way we're going to be able to do it is exactly what she just mentioned, nail on the head. How can we actually be able to break social patterns in our organizations so we can have a standardized governance model, because not everything's going to be in the same format, not everything's going to be working in the same way, and nothing's ever perfect. We know this, right? So we need to be able to decrease our costs as much as possible in order for us to start all working together better.
You mentioned some points that are very interesting when we talk about use and acceleration. That is the technological aspect per se, the use of technology, the learning of technology, the use of this technology, and we talked about how to improve and optimize the cost, expanding it. And we talked about some other topics, governance. We talked about centralized, decentralized governance. And I'd like you to talk. You mentioned about this in your first part. Can you explore more the aspect of barriers for the acceleration and use? What do you see in other industries and the barriers of the executives or the companies to have a cost-effective model, technology safe, extended in the operation, but you can accelerate and scale. What is the barrier? If you like to name one, you name one. I believe listening different presentations and what Jay commented, we know that is very complex, that is the quality of data, cost of processing, also available talents, and the scarcity of resources for you to activate this technology using the strategy. The main barrier is no technology. It is cultural barrier. And the cultural aspect, what's very important to mention, is the resistance of people not in using that technology, have a co-pilot with you, accelerating analysis. Before, when the robots came, you say you are going to stop having operations to have analytical activities. But when you have AI, you do not have operational or analytic activities anymore. What is the next step then? What's left for the human being? What is left for the human being is creativity, exploring new possibilities. You verify demands that are not met. Is raise performance bar. Because the analysis of the history, the estimate, deviation, everything is going to be delivered. And then you see a great resistance in the middle management, the leadership with a lateral vision already using and experience this. But middle management, you have the specialization. I see models that we put to run, and expert fights with the model. Who's right? And most of the time is not fighting with the model, the problem. You train the model to get it more powerful, and you have more time to think about, because there are several opportunities not met yet, instead of fighting with the model. So there is a cultural aspect. There is going to be a re-qualification of people. Before we were experts, but now you have to stop. And the cases of use more promising are the ones that are multifunctional, outside the silos, very specialized. And you can have people breaking these silos inside the organization, outside the organizations, outside their sector, to understand possibilities of new opportunities and more progress.
I just want to leave two things. I loved what she said. You know, I like to joke. Dell has 130,000 employees around the world. That means we have 130,000 opinions as well, right? And I see this every day. I see a data team saying, no, we have everything under control. We have Databricks, we have Snowflake, we have this, we have that. The reality is, if I go to the business and say, hey, can you tell me, is there something that you are currently not able to answer with your current data that you're not getting? And they'll say yes. And I'll say, well, wait a minute. The data team said they have everything. They have the perfect world, right? No, the reality is that siloed investments in data means siloed operational expenses, security expenses, and we're not able to work together. And what's interesting about that is the second point that she had just mentioned. It's not so much about the opinion base and the cultural base. We have to understand what's the hardest part about the productionization of data. By the way, guys, when I say data, AI is a tool. Data in, AI, data out. The outcome of AI is data. We have to do something with that data to drive action that makes us money, right? So the hardest part about the productionization of data is not technology, it's trust. How can I trust that this report is accurate? You're telling me I'm losing $1 million, show me where you got this from. And so in order to actually be able to build trust, this is where some of those barriers and those silos we have to overcome.
trust topic is not only the end customer, internal trust to believe in data, believe in the analysis, we believe this and use it. I had one more question for you. We have 10 seconds of comments. In your opinion, what's the difference? Who is going to lead this AI run? Who is open to rebuild, destruct what has taken us so far and think ahead in the client, in the market, and the gaps that need to be filled?
I think it's who's going to win is the individuals who have the most open mind for flexibility, who are dating every single tool in the world and marrying none of them, and being able to focus on outcomes to understand our business is not to marry any tool sets or technology. Our business is to drive outcomes and use case outcomes, which is how we make money.
Fantástico.
Jay and Renata, thank you so much. Thank you, participants. We are here for you at the Deloitte booth, so we can continue this conversation. Good afternoon.